Good morning, Jen. So let me start at the beginning with a very easy question. How would you describe yourself?
Oh, that's not so easy. I do two main things. I work with high-level individuals, boards, to help bring about a cultural shift for them as a team and the organisation. And then I speak on change and how we individually go through change from a stage point of view, and then work with large audiences and then deliver workshops to help them go through that process and really make decisions based on the strategy. That's a long answer to your question. So
okay, so let me take you back and start at the beginning. First met you when we were in the garage, the Speaker's Corner garage, way back when, and we both had hair and times were different and life was good.
Life's still good.
Life's still good, it should be, life's good. So how did you get in the game? How did you get into speaking? Because I think I met you just as you were starting, certainly starting with Speaker's Corner.
Yeah.
Amazing background, amazing career, which obviously kind of people have read about. But how did you decide you like speaking?
Well, no one asks that. So first of all, I was invited to give a motivational speech. So I was working in change. I'd been a lawyer. I decided to leave that. I was working in change. I've been doing that for about 5 years. I was speaking a little about change to clients who said, come in and, you're doing this program, come in, tell us more. And then I was approached 4 times to give a motivational presentation. And 3 times I said no, because I thought it was just, forgive me, about American rah-rah, just not anything that I would ever consider. And I still wince at the phrase motivational speaker, to be honest, because of all the baggage it brings. And I hope I bring a lot more value than rah-rah. But eventually I said yes. Absolute disaster. Was booked for an hour. I had it all planned out. I'd worked so hard on it. I had Taming Tigers. That was where Taming Tigers came. I had 3 months to prepare it. And Taming Tigers came from reading Jan Martel on holiday, A Life of Pi.
Yes.
As kind of a stress holiday, because I didn't know what to do at this presentation. It was just coming towards me. Went horribly wrong because I was on the stage looking at these guys thinking, who am I? Who am I?
Okay. So why did you accept it? Why did you say yes to it?
Because the guy asked me 4 times, convinced me, same guy, convinced me that I could do it, and to be honest, he was offering a really nice fee. So all those things combined, and I thought maybe. So what happened was I had these high points. Any public speaker will know this. You've got your high points that you're really proud of. You think that's a winning line, and then you've got other things you need to get across. Hopefully no low points, but things you need that aren't so exciting. And so I was looking at these people thinking, I shouldn't be here. I have no right. Massive imposter syndrome, and I just went from high spot to high spot. So I had an hour slot, but just hitting all the big lines. I managed to do that in about 25 minutes. Said goodnight. Well, because it was all big lines, most of the audience thought it was fantastic, and I got booked by someone at the back of the room for another one, which is where the jockey bet came. But the poor gentleman who booked me was just looking. I don't know if the coffee's ready. What have you just done to my day?
How did you feel? Did you feel you delivered, or did you know?
I felt I disgraced myself. I mean, I had a brief. and I'd let the guy down. And he let me know that as well.
But so from the outset, who did you feel, and it's one of the interesting things for me, who did you feel your client was? Was it the audience, or was it the person who was...
It's a really interesting, primarily it is the audience, and secondarily it is the client. And that doesn't mean that I'm not hitting the client's brief, but I have to be there with them as my first client to hit my client's brief, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I've got to serve those people where they are in that moment. And there's been moments where there's clearly a conflict in the brief, and I'll speak to whoever's booked me about that in advance and say, look, can I call you out on this? Yeah. Because it's not going to make sense to the audience if I'm giving this message and you just can I call you out? And you come up on stage. They always accept it. Well, they have to. I mean, because they get it straight away. Okay. It generally just hasn't occurred to them that we're going to create a big clash in the narrative between how they're approaching and what they've asked me to deliver for the audience, not how I want to approach it, what they've asked me to do. So we'll have that conversation, and that's always then electric, because I'll call them out, the whole audience freezes, she knows I'm going to call her out anyway, comes up on stage, we have a conversation, and you can see everyone's shoulders go down, but also you can see the whole jigsaw come together for them. Really important.
So let me take you back. You've done the first gig. Yeah. From your perspective, maybe not what you wanted. You then get offered the second one. Yeah. Why did you say yes?
Well, because I think firstly I was just touched that anybody had faith in me after what I'd just done. And I hadn't really, I mean, because it was a woman called Lynn, and she made it really clear that she'd loved it. I really loved it. But she didn't know it was a 25-minute version of an hour presentation. But it gave me a second chance. Yeah. And so, again, focus the mind, get it right, get my head together, and went and...
Did you do that one because you wanted to prove to yourself that you could do it, or you were just immensely grateful that actually someone appreciated you in the first place?
I think three things. It was delightful to get the invitation. I had something to prove. I had to get that right. And secondly, there was something very interesting about the idea that maybe this could work. 'Cause I got a lot of positive comments from other members of the audience who weren't aware of the timing mishap. Yes. And I thought, well, if I can pull this together, maybe I do have the right. Maybe I do have something to share. And I mean, I was very young, really. What was I, 34, 35? Looking at a room of, at this first one, of 40 plus, extremely successful salespeople selling telecom services into the financial markets. I mean, they were, there were a lot of Mercedes parked outside. Yeah. I didn't have one. So there were a number of reasons why I accepted that invitation.
So then, at what point did this become a thing for you? And you kind of moved into, hold on, I can do this.
Yeah, it was very conscious. So that it became a thing during the jockey year. Okay. And the reason it became a thing during the jockey year was twofold. One, I could see a route to having a much more exciting reach than I was ever going to have working solely in my practice, working in change. Secondly, in order to fit in the jockey thing, I had to reschedule my diary. Change happens in the schedule, always, from the big messages. So I've got to take things out of the schedule if I'm going to put in change, which is what hurts in business. We don't want to take anything out of the schedule because it's keeping the boss happy, the client happy, right? Letting go of something is really challenging. So I had to take stuff out of the schedule, and the only thing I could work out as somebody who was delivering a lot of training, a lot of consultancy, was selling, because I would spend a lot of time building a relationship, putting in a proposal. That could be a 6 months to a year process, by which point the person would ring me up and say, I'm really grateful, but actually I've got a new job. So the time invested in not earning money was huge. Yeah. By moving into speaking, people like yourself were willing to take on that expertise, and I could receive the phone call and concentrate on doing a brilliant job for what the client needed, which was my job. So it allowed me to just slice the diary down. That meant I could focus on what I was good at, and I could get on with the jockey bet.
And was that during the jockey, or before, or were you conscious during the jockey bet? This is what you came to realise.
I looked at it, and I looked with a coach at the time. I looked at the schedule, and he said, your biggest problem isn't that you can't ride a horse or that you're overweight. Your problem is you haven't got time. So unless we solve that, let's give up, because you can lose the weight, you can ride a horse, but change happens in the schedule. So,
at the time, how did you view the marketplace? How was you said from the outset you don't like the term motivational speaker. Kind of very much at that time, I would have you as a motivational speaker, and those and clients and the world would see what motivational speakers do. How did you view it, and how were you riding the train, or were you seeing a strategic path to move yourself into a different area?
I never saw it as riding a train, and I still don't. And I see having a seat on the train, if it is one, as just a massive privilege, because to be permitted and to be trusted to stand in front of 10 to, biggest one for me, 3,000 people at the Bellagio in Vegas, to be trusted by the organisation, to be trusted by the people they're going to invest 3,000 times an hour, that it's going to provide value is just enormous. So that was the first thing. I never wanted to, it was always really important to me to bring lasting value. So by bringing the Taming Tigers framework, and having proven it in racing and business, and then latterly in taking the British freedive record, I always believed, and it's borne out in the room, that I could bring real insight for individuals on how they could manage themselves differently in order to seize opportunity.
So and how has the audience and your clients been receptive? How have they changed in terms of their receptiveness to your messages?
Increasing.
In terms of
the urgency. So my message is all about how do we overcome our natural reticence and obstacles and our false perceptions of the world that we've learned to keep ourselves safe, primarily in an industrial age where somebody knew the right answer and they were the boss and we got it right for that person, or they'd mark our homework and that had consequences, and the world has shifted. So I find now bringing in ideas about taming tigers, or the fear algorithm that's constantly running to keep us safe from uncertainty and risk in a world that demands we take uncertainty and risk. If one can help the audience understand how that's functioning in their heads, how to overcome it, and then tell a story about how you did that at 100 metres, or in XYZ company, that really locks together for people. And I hope, other speakers do it brilliantly too, I hope what I'm delivering is a kind of perfect storm of influence, so that the people in the room are thinking, yeah, I'm running out of excuses here.
Yeah.
I'm running out of excuses. I do see my boss like that, and hopefully they're thinking it through. The really important part is that that's coming at the back of a day of talking about strategy and what we need to do. So it's converting that from, yeah, great, got it, to, oh, that's what I'd have to actually do, and I can.
And do you think the audiences are almost kind of, in terms of the structure of your speech, you have to spend less time up top convincing and explaining what you're going to do, because actually people are more open-minded to change now than they've ever been, because they understand that actually that they're confused? Or has that not shifted?
It shifted enormously. So that the appetite for learning. So we traditionally, change has been all about scaring people so that they'll believe there's a need to change. Your cheese has moved, your iceberg's melting, your platform's burning, and then eventually we'll paint a vision of something better. And then we told people there was a change curve, so if you're going to change, you're going to get really depressed and anxious, and you're going to be angry, and you're going to deny it, and then eventually you'll accept it. Well, I don't know anybody in the Olympic world or F1 who's looking at future performance, at what they want to achieve, and setting objectives based on, and then feeling all depressed, and we have good days and bad days, but basically it's about, how do I enhance performance? And I think the world knows that it needs to change. Be more specific, the individuals know they need to go through change. The problem is, how? We all know it's moving real fast, but how do I keep up? And I think what we've got now is a rate of change out there and a natural rate of human adaptation. And that gap we could call mental health issues, resilience issues, well-being at work issues, mental health problems. And unless we can teach people how to close that gap, those problems only increase. So there's a huge appetite for understanding, how do I manage myself to deliver?
And can you, in your long career kind of in the world of speaking, do you have specific moments where you saw the audience actually accept the change paradigm quicker than before, or you just think it's an evolution?
I think it's an evolution. And what has changed for me is, because you use the term motivational speaker, and there's a whole load of cynicism around a motivational speaker. And so I used to get billed as the motivational speaker, and you could feel the audience going, well, you're not off the telly, are you? You haven't won a Formula 1 and Grand Prix, have you? So prove it. Who are you? Now, there's just a hunger to say, well, who are you and what have you got to bring? And as soon as I introduce the topics that I'm going to talk about, and the fact that I've managed myself through that process to train to do things and also to deliver under pressure at 100 metres under the ocean, literally under pressure. It's an exercise in managing emotional and mental well-being at 100 metres under the earth. It's the whole game. Breath holding is a housekeeping. We can all learn to hold our breath. So as soon as they get that, they're in. Now, previously they would have got that and thought, you're going to boast about that, aren't you? You think you're clever. Well, I'm quite clever. And there was a clash, and I had to win that, and it could take 15 minutes. I'll give you a concrete example. I used to have a set introduction that bragged for me, so that the bragging was done, and they thought, oh, fair enough, before I got up on stage. I don't need that anymore. And that's not me that's changed. That's the audience, I believe, that has changed. Now they'll just say, here's Jim, he does change programs around the world and works with great companies. And they think I'm some change consultant, but they're still leaning forward. And then I'll paint the picture of what it is I'm going to discuss, the human element of it, and where it's been tested in industry and by me. And you can see we are in now. And it's so much nicer.
So kind of from your perspective, and who's changed in terms of you getting the bookings? Is it the audiences that have changed, or actually the people who are organising the event, they've matured in the marketplace to start really understanding what they're hoping from their event?
Well, I mean, over the years, bookings have been reasonably constant. That feeling that I'm describing, that alteration, I'm going to be risky here, given that many of your watchers may well be event organisers, and of course clients of mine. I think they can be, not always can be, slightly behind the audience. So the audience is under a pressure to deliver at work, and they're hearing new targets or new strategy or new products or whatever it is that they're hearing at this event, because events now aren't jollies, they're there for a reason. And everything's to help the organisation through its individuals go perform. So they're in that space. I think the organisers can be in the space of still theatre, which is part of it. But I don't think any longer we need to have a selfie with whoever it is. Well, they might bring great value, the selfie people, but but I think there has to be the people in the room want a value now. They want to know, okay, so I've got a new product, I've never been in that market, I've got a new kind of healthcare payer I've got to approach with a new conversation I've never had about, new tech I haven't learned. Serious? And I provide some tools on how you do that.
So I kind of appreciate you've enjoyed all stages of your career, but kind of in the early days where you had an audience who sit there and say, come on, be entertained, and then you blow them away because you'd actually give them tangible stuff. And now you've got an audience who are desperate for you to give them tangible stuff. What was more challenging? Which one did you enjoy more? Which one do you think you get more reward from? The cynical or the eager, I suppose?
I guess it depends how I'm defining the reward, because the reward of getting that cynical audience to move to a standing ovation is wonderful. But in a way, you've won a kind of battle of egos and proving yourself and a whole sort of load of unhealthy stuff in order to achieve that. Now we're having a really grown-up conversations. I think people in the industry are having really grown-up conversations. And I think, the media haven't caught up with how grown-up a lot of industry is trying to be. I remember we were just mums and dads trying to do something positive in the world in order to A, contribute, B, feed the family. So there's a I witted on there, lost my thread, sorry.
Let me ask. If we've moved from a place whereby when you stood up on stage, almost your job was to impress people who were waiting for you to be impressed, and now we're in a world where people expect you to deliver tangible stuff, which one do you feel gave you more or gives you more satisfaction, and I suppose it's more challenging?
The latter, so now, gives me a lot more satisfaction. There's huge satisfaction in converting a cynical audience to a standing ovation. That was great. But there was a degree of showmanship and theatre about that age, which got in the way, I guess, of what I was actually trying to do, which was to provide tools for living really rich lives. We're all going to have to adapt and change. We all can adapt and change, but we can get really stuck in that. And so now we're having a really grown-up conversation in the room about, I know I've got to change, I've got some tools to do that, and we're looking each other in the eye, having a whole different conversation. And that is what I always wanted it to be. So in a way, it's become perfect for me.
And do you believe,
on a personal level?
So from your perspective, and you used the word a couple of times, I'm fascinated by this area. When you're standing on stage, are you having a conversation or are you delivering a speech?
I'm having a conversation.
So going back to where we started from and what you viewed as your first speaking engagement, which was a failure because it was 25 minutes of high points, and looking at the world of TED now and the 70-minute speeches, actually, when we talk about conversation, if you were given a free platform to devise your set as you want it, how would you run your set?
Not quite sure I understand the question.
So in a world where traditionally you get the hour set and you're speaking for 45, 50 minutes and you have your 10-minute Q&A, and you talked previously about the fact that you were given the hour and you spoke for 25 minutes, it was just high point after high point, but actually you didn't fill the whole time and the event organiser wasn't as happy as you'd like them to be. The fact that you view the keynote speech as a conversation. If I said to you, there's an hour for your set,
I see.
How would you run that? How would you run that session for 300 people in an audience that you feel you were actually delivering real value?
So in that conversation to me doesn't involve an audience voice externally. So I would keep it to an hour because there's a lot of work to do. But I guess I'd describe it as a massed coaching session. I am provoking thought. There isn't anyone, and which is my whole purpose. That's like a really good film. The director is taking you to the next stage of anticipation, and then either gratifying you or surprising you. And I'm doing that not with story and movie though. I'm doing it with a journey, and I know where the audience member is going to start off, degree of cynicism. Then we're going to become friends. Then they're going to start saying, "Yeah, but you're right. I do want to do that, and I do. Yeah, that is why I find it difficult. You're right." And then, yeah, but how on earth is freediving? Oh, freediving helps me because of that. Okay, yeah. And then I'll drop in, for example, how our perceptions, how we view the world, our beliefs, what we've learned about, like, for example, the boss is senior and there to mark my work, not the boss is there to support me deliver great stuff for the client. Then I'll outline how that perception drives the fear algorithm, and how we can change the perception, not by looking in the mirror, by tangibly, practically, really changing it, not by a mantra, and then drive the whole algorithm differently, because the belief sets off the whole fear response. If I believe that you're here to mark my work, I'm having a wholly different conversation with you, and I'm not sharing wacky, innovative ideas, and I won't make a mistake with my clients if you might hear about it. But if we're working together to innovate in the marketplace, well, I might. And so I have to change that belief to drive the whole conversation on from there. As they're recognizing these points in the audience, they're challenging their beliefs. And as the boss gets up at the end and says, "Oh, that's wonderful because I am here to support you, and that's what we've tried to say all day, I hope you're getting that." Now, when we go into the workshop after the presentation, where people are invited to take the strategy, my framework, and what they're going to do tomorrow differently to deliver, and it's a planning workshop. When we go into that, at the end of it, we have the most incredible conversations. I mean, so, example, pharma company, top 50 people globally come together, delivered the presentation, went into the workshop, they had a major challenge ahead, and the questions in the room, from everybody knew what the game was, everybody got it, everybody understood it before they even appeared in the room. But as soon as we added the framework to the strategy, suddenly the most beautiful questions were coming up. "Oh, Mr. CEO, whose name I won't mention, does that mean you're really okay if we do this?" I thought I'd said that as many times as I knew how to, but yeah, for the record, I am totally okay. Oh, and you can see half the room at the most senior level go, "Oh," because we're putting together bits of the jigsaw. It's this old conversation about how often do you communicate change, but there's the communication of it, and there's really landing what it means for me. Then there's that means I would have to do this. He wouldn't let me do that. And now we facilitate that conversation. Oh, we've greased the wheels. And the outcome from those workshops is the most tangible and immediate, which is always the most exciting, is a cue to talk to the boss to get permission. "I want to do this, is that okay?" "Yes." "I want to do this, okay?" "Yeah, within these parameters." "Yes." We had one event, I won't name the company, big American company, and we had the top 100 from EMEA together in Barcelona, and the EMEA head, who reports to the board of a major household name, couldn't leave. I don't think he made dinner that night. I mean, just he couldn't get out of the room. The permission conversations kept coming. Yeah. And the most junior person in that room ran 3 or 4 factories. I mean, this is a major organisation. These are not junior people. But we're human.
And so have you seen, kind of from a CEO perspective, and how do you judge that actually when you are going along and they're paying lip service to you being there, but the CEO really isn't going to change, as opposed to the examples you were describing there, where the CEO actually wants you to actually facilitate that? Is there signs immediately you can tell, whether it's on the briefing call or when you arrive at the event, or do you feel that actually you talk about the clients, we talk about the audience, but actually another one of your clients while you're up on stage is actually you're delivering a different message to the CEO than maybe you are to the audience to get them to open up?
So there are 2 sides to that. One is, I've never met a CEO who decides they're not going to change. You just know that the ingredients aren't in place for that to happen. So in many conversations, they'll say, "Well, we've got great vision and values." So that's interesting. That'd be really useful for me to know. Has anyone got the vision and values? And I'm speaking to maybe HR or head of change or the CEO. So we clearly haven't got any vision and values, but that's the very organisation you could never say that to, because they've spent a lot of money and they've made the posters. And so that's done. The people know. Well, I don't. So you know that it's not going to happen. They believe it is. And frankly, I'm not engaged to challenge that too much, because at this stage I'm a speaker. If they want to move further, we can. So I play my role. Now, in that situation, yes, there is a message coming from the stage, because if we're moving into a new age, we're all trained for the industrial age. We're trying to get it right for the authority figure and play our bit and keep our heads low and not get fired. And now everyone's going to say, don't fear failure. Seriously? What do you mean by that? I do, and so do you. You punish me for it. So we're going to have to, and that's a bigger conversation, but there are two sides to this coin. There's me understanding what I need to do to go outside of this comfort zone into what I call the confusion zone, which is not a safe place, in order to emerge the other side. Then there's how do the leaders facilitate and make it safe for people to go through that process. That's a conversation. So I can deliver a presentation on the leader side, I can deliver a presentation on the individual side. I can try and combine the two, but there's a lot to do in an hour. But what I can certainly do is nudge it towards the CEO, and I can nudge it to the room. Yeah. If you don't feel you're engaged in this conversation and you're being helped out of the comfort zone, you've got to talk to your boss about it. Now that can be a little bit controversial, but not that controversial if I'm being briefed to talk about driving this exciting program forward.
One final question for you. Yeah. We've talked a lot about the journey of kind of where you've been when you first started to where we are now and what we're talking about. What do you see the future of your speaking and what you hope to aspire to do, but also for the industry as a whole and for audiences and clients out there? Just a small question to end up on.
As this world becomes more uncertain, disrupted, surprising, exciting, anxiety-inducing if you're not able to keep a lid on it all, the need for fresh ideas becomes more urgent, and the thirst for them becomes greater. So, as I see it, the need for an external perspective, when you've gathered your people together, which is now a really important event, not a alcoholic jolly, then that need for bringing an external, surprising, different point of view is greater than ever. So I see this for quality people who can deliver something of value to the organisation and to the people in the room as being a thriving place to be.
Brilliant. Jim, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much indeed for your time. And I'm sure I'll see you tomorrow or something like that. But appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.